Alright, so this time we're playing as the Trader. And I tried to design a different character, one that I thought looked like a trader. Something great about this game's art style is the way it uses pixel graphics and the way our mind approximates and generalizes things. For immensely, what's the word I'm looking for? Immensely varied character customization. Like, you could basically make any person you can think of, or at least a vague approximation of any person you could think of. My brother made a dead ringer for Oishi from Higurashi using this game's character customizer. So, the Trader can interact with shrines in a different way than any other character. The Trader is capable of sacrificing any item at all, to a shrine, and in return the shrine will cost less money to use. This includes chance shrines, health shrines, even blood shrines, and on top of that, the Trader only has to use one item at an altar. Normally, altars require that you have two exactly matching items, and then you get a more powerful item if you combine them. But as the Trader, you can put any single item on an altar and it will become more powerful. The Trader is a very special class. You never know what you're going to get out of chance shrines, so you could get something amazing from one of those. You always need a health shrine if you're taking a beating. And, blood shrines have amazing blessings. Gonna sacrifice some items to this statue. Sorry, shrine. And then see what pops out. Got a better bow. Nothing too great. But there's always that chance, And you can afford more. I guess basically it's about rolls. You get more rolls as the Trader than any other character. You get more chance shrines, you get more blood shrines, you get more heals, you get more rolls, you get more chances for good things to happen, and pretty much no bad things. Trader has really no downsides to him at all. I believe the current world record holder for CaveBlazers was playing as a Trader when he got the world record, but I'm not 100% sure how much the class played into his success. I'd have to watch it again. I think we just got the Dragon Sword. We sure as fuck did. It sets shit on fire, and it hurts a lot, and it's pretty good. Only downside is it swings slow, but if you're careful, you can still work with it. Swinging slow is a big deal, though, I'm not gonna lie. Like, especially if you intend to run toward the enemy, swinging slow is a big deal. Can be a deal breaker. But the Dragon Sword is too good to pass up. Like, if we were competing with a Crystal Sword or Crimson Blade or something, maybe I'd choose one of those instead. But the Dragon Sword's pretty up there. It's pretty good. And here's the Fire Sword, but I'm not sure why we'd need the Fire Sword when we have the Dragon Sword, which is just the Fire Sword, but better and deals way more damage. Just stick with the Dragon Sword. It's called the Dragon Sword. It's like swinging a dragon around, basically, is how the Dragon Sword works, I think. Well, that was unfortunate. There is actually a blessing that makes you immune to spikes that I've only gotten once. I don't know if it's just really rare or I'm really unlucky. But the fact that there's a blessing that gets rid of spike damage seems kind of silly to me. Not because it's useless or anything, but it doesn't have any combat utility, it doesn't buff your character in a significant way, and it doesn't help with any of the actual run-ending dangers that you might face. Like, there's not a boss that drops spikes or anything like that. Most of the times I've died, it's been because of stupidity during a boss battle, or stupidity during combat, or I just got overwhelmed. I mean, but, like was already discussed, a lot of people seem to have issues with the spikes, so maybe it's more helpful for them. Consumables are kind of rare in this game, but I don't think they're as rare as everyone makes them out to be. If you explore thoroughly enough and kill enough enemies, it's not uncommon to find tarts or chunks of meat or apples or hearts on almost every level, if you explore thoroughly enough. I mean, of course, sometimes you're not going to get a good roll, but there still remains the fact that, you could just not get hit. That's always a possibility. We're currently sacrificing items to this store shrine, which I completely forgot to mention was a thing, and mostly because I forgot. But now we got an emerald pendant for cheap. and emerald pendants are good. Just pretty much universally good. Barely cost us anything. And we don't need to save a lot of money, because whenever we get to a heal shrine or any such thing, we can very quickly sacrifice items to it, and we'll be able to afford it regardless of whether we've saved up a lot of money. Such is the power of the trader. You're going to notice during these videos that unlocks and classes and items and stuff are going to jump around a lot. Not in the videos themselves, but between the videos, and that's because, well, first of all, I play the game between videos, and secondly, I started a new file, and then played through half of it, and then played through, like, another half of it with my sister, and the unlocks are kind of all over the place, so just don't worry about it. So here I get fucked by jumper slimes, but it's definitely my fault. They have arrows telling you where they're going to go, and they bounce off a surface whenever they hit it. So, you know, that's my bad. I'm willing to admit that what happened there was my fault. Was it a hard situation to get out of? Yes, but it was possible. I just did not think quickly enough. And you could argue that maybe I just can't think quickly enough, period. Like, that it's not within my scope. And that may be the case, but that's still my fault. Like, that's a personal problem. There are some people that legitimately cannot read a screen fast enough to play certain video games. That's just how life goes. That doesn't mean the video game is unfair. Like, I had all the tools to get out of that situation. I powered up Poison Bow. Bosses are affected by poison, in case you're curious. Being able to poison bosses or burn bosses is a great thing, because having them take passive damage is a lot better than slowly plinking away at them. Because then you can focus more on evading their attacks. Now let's get ourselves a real quick full heal using these probably worthless potions and this worthless bomb. Really just take everything we don't want. All of it. And there you go. For mere 58 gold, we have a full heal. Which is great considering those shrines are usually extremely expensive. Especially later in the game, where they can cost like 700 to 900 gold. Hey Asgard, what's up? This guy's pretty easy. Shoots very simple projectiles, which you can dodge just by moving away from them. Two kinds of very simple projectiles that you can dodge by just moving away from them. This is the second kind. And, well, see, I did the opposite of move away from those. Generally, what you want to do is not jump into them, as I did. And also, he will ground pound. But that's basically all he does, is fires two simple kinds of projectiles, which are easy to dodge, and you should not do what I did. And he ground pounds, and that's it. Very simple guy. Only thing that makes him even mildly special is the fact that you can't jump on the walls while fighting him. My cat tore my headphone cord out of my head, and now I can't hear anything. That was a bad take on that boss. I had absolutely no reason to lose all my shields there. I will take the Life Drain Blessing, though. Life Drain Blessing means when we kill enemies, we get health back for it, which is amazing. That's probably my favorite. And combined with the Crimson Blade, which also gives you health back, you can just regain almost any health you lose from fights. Doesn't work on bosses, though. You just have to actually be good at fighting bosses, which is easier said than done. Alright, so with our powered-up Ricochet Poison Bow, I'm feeling better about any potential future boss encounters. And before I forget, because it is going to slip between the cracks if I don't mention it, well, first I want to mention that doing the downward stab on regular melee enemies is great. Doing it on slimes is actually not a great idea. And that is largely because slimes can jump through the downward stab in larger numbers, so... And slimes damage you on contact, unlike other enemies. On contact while jumping, at least, so... Using the downward stab on slimes is not a great idea. Even though you're probably going to see me do it a lot, it's not a great idea. Anyway, the other thing I was going to mention is that the Switch version does cost $5 more than the PC version, but that is because the Switch version comes with the Arena mode, and I would consider the Arena mode essential to the experience. First of all, it helps you get better at the combat, which is very good. Blessing of the Arrow Light gives our arrows a homing effect. Very helpful, especially when we're trying to poison a boss. Anyway, the arena mode helps you get much better at the combat and is arguably even better than the main game mode. It's more arcadey, for sure, but it has gorgeous music, a lot of new enemy types, and it's a blast with 2 people. So if you're curious why the Switch version you're seeing here costs $5 more than the PC version, that's because it has $5 of extra content. And I would consider the arena mode to be worth an extra $5, because I think it's just as good as the main game mode, if not better. Not to diss the main game mode or anything like that, but arena mode distills the combat and roguelike mechanics of the game into a more approachable, digestible format. Which is saying something, because this game is already pretty approachable and digestible, if you ask me. And I assume you're asking me because, you know, you're watching me play this. The magnetism blessing just means that, like, golden shit flies toward us. It's basically a life, what's the word I'm looking for? Quality of life upgrade. It's nothing huge. Kind of like the spikes upgrade, I think. Some reviews for this game came out specifically for the Switch version, and those reviews rarely seem to mention the arena mode, and some of them go out of their way not to mention the arena mode. And most of the reviews that go out of their way not to mention it, or only passively mention it negatively, they're generally reviewers who think the combat is too chance-focused. Which, I guess, if you think the combat is chance-focused, you may think an arena mode is not going to be good. But what the presence of an arena mode suggests to me is confidence in a combat system, and that maybe you should rethink whether it's the game's fault. You know, it's okay to admit that it's not the game's fault. It's okay to admit that it's your fault. Admitting that it's your fault does not mean you're bad at the game. It can just be a hard game and still be fair. You can have it both ways. It can be your fault, and you can also not be bad. I know that's very difficult to grasp for some people, but it is possible. You can admit something is your fault and then also not be bad in general. I'm just having an amazing time with this downward stab this run, so I think getting that downward stab attack upgrade is going to be a fantastic investment. Speaking of this game's difficulty, the developer is aware that it's difficult. He does not think it's unfairly difficult, of course, or else he would not have designed it this way, and I agree it's not unfairly difficult, but he does know it's difficult, and there is a mode you can use to lower the game's difficulty called Custom Mode, where you can change virtually every single thing about the game design. You can change the frequency at which enemies appear, the damage enemies deal, whether enemies appear at all, the damage bosses deal, how often bosses appear, or whether bosses appear at all. You can tweak pretty much every single facet of the game using Custom Mode. The only thing that won't happen if you use Custom Mode is you will not unlock stuff. And that doesn't matter, because you unlock stuff even when you fail. As you've already seen, none of the content you unlock is locked behind you being good at the game. You can be absolutely terrible and die on the first level over and over and over, hundreds of times, and you can still unlock everything. Yes, you'll unlock stuff faster if you're better at the game, but as long as you accomplish something, picking up an item, grabbing 10 pieces of gold, slaying a single enemy, as long as you accomplish something, you will get points, and those points will help you unlock stuff. So, you know, if you're having trouble with the game's difficulty, Custom Mode is there. You can beat the game using Custom Mode. You can see the ending. You can fight the final boss using Custom Mode. And that's a pretty huge accessibility option, letting the player change basically every single facet of the game design. So, you know, actually make use of it. I have not personally used Custom Mode because I want to play the game in its default state with its default difficulty, and yes, it is hard, but I'm making that choice intentionally, knowing it's difficult. Alright, it's time to fight Goliath, the living Tetris block. We hit his eyeball a certain amount of times, then he falls down and becomes extra vulnerable to damage. The good thing about this boss is that even though he can be difficult to hit, because we have poison arrows, we can reasonably poison him and deal damage to him over time, even when we can't reach him, such as we are doing right now. This boss can be legitimately hard to reach for a few reasons. First of all, he's floating. And secondly, his shape changes sometimes. Sometimes putting the eyeball on top, so that way you need to jump on these stone fists and reach up above the Tetris block to where his eyeball is. And that can be incredibly difficult. Something we're going to have to do right now. And I almost did. It reminds me of old Super Nintendo era boss battles, this one, with the giant stone fists being used as platforms. I can't think of any specific examples, but I'm sure Kirby's done this at least once, if memory serves. Anyway, that went insanely well. Unreasonably well. The Morning Star Blessing just makes the Morning Star rotate around you, which will damage enemies if they run into it. It's pretty useful, keeps them off your back in some circumstances, literally off your back. And when combined with things like the Lightning Blessing and the Thorns Blessing, it can make enemies just kind of stay away from you in general, which is great if you're being swarmed by them. Oh hey, a mini-boss. This guy, big guy, throws rocks. We're gonna try and keep a distance and hit him with our poison arrows, because I really... Oh, he's dead already. Normally they do not die that fast, but our bow is super powered right now. So the jungle levels noticeably have new enemies. They have slimes that can poison and burn us. The poison slimes will jump in the air and fire poison projectiles, and the burn slimes can burn us just by running into us. There is a difference between burning and poison, and the difference is that you can die via burning, but you cannot die via poison. As far as I can tell, that is the only difference, which just makes burning superior. But we have a poison bow, and that's pretty much as good as a burn for the purpose of boss battles. There's also that mole enemy, which it's best to downward stab on, as we did. It gets kinda hectic in these later stages, but we're pretty near the end of the game right now. There you got to see the hand blessing in action. I didn't mention it before, but the hand blessing does in fact just straight up bring you back to life, making it possibly the most valuable blessing in the game. There's also an item you can get that does basically the same thing, called the Ankh. Just brings you back to life the same way the hand does. Both of them create shockwaves too, which push the enemies away. One of them is more dramatic than the other. That would have been good to stand near. That arcane box would have healed us, but there's no way we could have known that. It very well could have just exploded. That's also a possibility. And I'd rather not take that chance. Yes, as you're seeing, things later in the game get incredibly hectic. It's not unmanageable, but I have not a lot of experience getting this late in the game. I get here maybe once in every 10, 15 runs. And there is another set of levels even past this. And then there's the final boss. So, you know, we're actually not that far away in terms of mathematical distance from the finale. The question is just whether we can survive, and what bosses we will get. I think the bosses are really, the later you get into the game, the bosses are really the gatekeepers of whether you're going to proceed, because even though it is possible to die to regular combat, and I do very frequently, the fact remains that it is possible to luck your way through the combat just by narrowly avoiding everything and jumping around everything. It is difficult. Arguably, in many circumstances, more difficult than directly confronting the enemies, but it is possible to just luck your way into a path past all the enemies, but you can't luck your way into a path past the bot. I was going to use that shrine, Jumper Slime, but you can't luck your way into a path around the bosses. You have to fight them, and you have to be good at fighting them. No matter how this goes, this has been a fantastic run, and nothing short of me losing to the easiest boss available in the game would make this a bad run. As long as I lose to anything but the easiest boss, I think I can say I'm satisfied with this run. So there's purple platforms now that shoot spikes. They might appear, they might not. Who knows? The Blessing of Generosity makes a ghost appear, and the ghost will give us money if we kill a lot of enemies in a row. It's not a great blessing, because the only time you're going to kill a lot of enemies in a row is if you don't have any choice, or you have a perk that makes you an insane person who benefits from killing a lot of enemies in a row and putting yourself in immense danger all the time. And there is a class for that. There is a class that would go very well with the Ghost of Generosity, which we will see eventually. Not sure if we'll get the Ghost of Generosity while using that class, but you never know. Seems like there's a pretty safe way to get to the... well, I thought it was safe, but it wasn't. So there's a pretty good chance I'm going to die to this boss because I haven't memorized the boss patterns that well yet. I am getting better, but it's very gradual. But if this is the easiest boss and I die here, that would be embarrassing because the easiest boss is just far too easy to lose to. Hey, it's the easiest boss in the game, Grubbington. He comes out of the ground and then you stand inside of him and mash melee. The only way I could reasonably lose this fight is if I sucked so much ass that I got hit by his incredibly well telegraphed, easy to avoid attacks over and over. That's the only way I could reasonably lose here.